What's up, YouTube? Brett Hoover from Rants here. Alright, so can a show about Joe Exotic, the Tiger King, actually live on without Joe Exotic? Well, season 2 of Tiger King tries to answer that question. And I think does a pretty adamant job of answering that question that it posed. This is going to be our Tiger King season 2 review here on Rants. Overall, I'll just start out from the very beginning of what I thought about the overall aspect of the show, whether it lived up to expectations, whether it lived up to season 1. And sadly, I hate to report this, but Noah's show about Joe Exotic cannot actually live on without Joe Exotic. We got to see brief glimpses of Joe Exotic, but we really didn't get to see the quirkiness, the just out of control behavior of somebody that is a narcissist like Joe Exotic. I mean, the dude ran for president, governor, or whatever. He was crazy. He had all these multiple husbands. He was, he was a larger than life figure. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you agree with what he did or don't agree with what he did. Overall, he was a character that wasn't supposed to be loved or hated, but just to capture your imagination. That is what he did. Him being the adversary of Carol Baskins, we really, season 1 made that into like a phenomenon. People that just absolutely despise Carol Baskins after that season, and rightfully so in a lot of ways. In my personal opinion, she went from calling a zoo an animal sanctuary, and there was women on there that was like, God bless you, Carol Baskins, you're doing great work. And I'm like, she's doing the exact same thing Joe Exotic's doing. So why are you rooting for her and hating on him? It felt like they all were bad guys. That's what season 1 tried to convey. But they had all that uniqueness and all that disaster that was Joe Exotic's life to really hang their hat on and to keep us interested throughout the season. Sadly, season 2 unfortunately does not have that. Of course, we've got Jeff Lowe and Tim Stark. Basically, were the two main focuses of season 2. Tim Stark tried his best to be outlandish, tried to be the next Joe Exotic, but he just come off as just really vicious, cold, uncaring towards his animals, uncaring towards the people around him. Basically, just almost, I will say, he was almost like a cult-like figure. It's like he'll take out anybody to get what he wants, and if you didn't like what he did, he made just all kinds of crazy threats. Didn't come off as the person you'd want to cheer for by any stretch of the imagination. Now, as far as Jeff Lowe is concerned, look, a lot of people already hated Jeff Lowe. Jeff Lowe is basically the reason why Joe Exotic is behind bars. Jeff Lowe did all of that to save his own skin. He makes no bones about it. It was either Joe Exotic or Jeff Lowe, in Jeff Lowe's opinion, and he was going to pick himself. Now, we get to see a little bit more about Jeff Lowe's life, but nothing more that we already didn't know. He's not a very likable character. He's not a character that really catches your intrigue. When it was him versus Carol Baskins, there was actually moments in this show, or in this season, that I actually kind of rooted for Carol Baskins because I just didn't like Jeff Lowe. I felt like Jeff Lowe was just a con man, someone that really didn't care about the animals. He didn't care about the zoo. He didn't care about anything. He really didn't even care about fighting Carol Baskins. He felt like just a really terrible antagonist slash protagonist. And Carol Baskins come off as bland. Carol Baskins, she come off this season as not somebody that was horrible in her own right, but somebody that was just trying to gather attention for herself. Really almost a Joe Exotic wannabe, where she's sitting there talking about her diaries, and, the things inside of it really kind of come off as, narcissistic in a lot of ways. Like, who cared what she thought in her everyday life from like 15 years ago? Carol Baskins obviously thinks that it's interesting. I found it to be incredibly boring. The search for her husband and trying to bring justice for that kind of come off as a rehashing of what we already got in season one. I felt like we got the best of it in season one. We already knew her husband was a philanderer. We already knew her husband, had all those properties in Costa Rica. We already knew all of that. We already knew that they had a tumultuous relationship, that he was going to leave her, that maybe there was some forged documents. We already knew all of this. So the way they were trying to rehash them in season two just come off as almost a retelling in a less interesting way. So no, I feel like everything about season two was felt more like a money grab. More than trying to tell an interesting story, it come off as the people that put him in jail now wanted him out of jail because that's the only way you're going to get a season three. The whole relationship between Joe Exotic and his husband, completely fell apart, which just wasn't really that shocking. They spent very little time on that. About the only interesting thing in this show or this season really was the fact that Joe Exotic was dating from prison. But they told so little bit about that that it made that even uninteresting. And, look, you just cannot have a show called The Tiger King about Joe Exotic without Joe Exotic. These other people just are not, they're either money hungry, trying to, get a season three and trying to just make everything about themselves, or they're basically just a bunch of narcissists like Joe Exotic and like Carol Baskins and like Jeff Lowe and all that, where they just think of themselves as somebody that needs to be shown to the world. And they just come off as bland in a lot of ways. Without Joe Exotic, it just didn't feel the same. But their season two basically was an exact retelling of season one. Gave us very little details beyond what we already knew in season one. In fact, like I said, I found myself being more on the side of Carol Baskins this season than I found myself being against her, which was something that I did not want to be. But I simply just did not like Tim Stark that much that I was like, you know what? That guy needs to be behind bars. Carol Baskins is actually right by what she's trying to do against him. And Peter was right by what they were trying to do against him in a lot of ways. Which I kind of felt that way in season one to a certain extent when it come to Peter. Peter's just trying to save those animals. They're looking at all these guys as being vindictive and wrong and needing to be in jail. And look, after season two, I can't really blame them in a lot of ways. I actually agree most part. I'm sorry, still getting over a cold. Um, but yeah, overall, I just felt like season two was a complete total waste. It was basically just a retelling of what we already knew. It didn't shine that much light on any of these characters. I felt like Tim Stark was a generic version, a less likable version of Joe Exotic. I wish they would have added more scenes of Joe Exotic talking from prison. They did not do that. Really, there was only one episode, and that was like, I think episode two, that really was just completely and totally focused on Joe Exotic. Everything else was on everybody else. And I felt like that was the most uninteresting part about this. Some of the crazy characters that we saw in season one wasn't even on this show in the first place. Everybody just felt so money hungry that they were trying to get. They put Joe Exotic in jail to get attention, and then they tried to get him out for attention. Nothing felt serious, and nothing felt serious or unserious in a funny type way. It just all felt like, okay, this is all about season three. Would not shock me if we get a season 3 out of this. But as far as season 2 is concerned, I feel like it's a wash. Um, you know what? If you want this show to continue, you just have to have Joe Exotic. There's just no two ways about it. He makes this show what it is. He makes it interesting. He makes it watchable. Without this, it just seems like a lot of people that's doing the wrong thing for the wrong reasons, and they're not fun or interesting or funny in any form or fashion. Season 1 we got to see a cult leader that was surrounded by tigers. We got to see all the crazy things that Joe Exotic did. We got to see the woman that got her, arms bit off was still like, yay, Joe Exotic. Like, we got to see a lot of crazy people in that season. Season 2, we saw less of those characters, and we just basically got a bunch of stories that was just either retellings or just not really adding any interest to the story as a whole. But overall, guys, let me know what y'all think of Tiger King Season 2. I think it was a wash in a lot of ways. I feel like I kind of wasted 5 hours of my life, just watching stuff that I pretty much already knew. But that's my view of it. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? And as always, guys, thanks for watching. Take care.